Okay, greetings again. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to make your own custom patterns. And your patterns, if I have my patterns up here, but let me show you something here. Let me close the tab. If your patterns aren't showing up over here, again, you can go over to Windows on the top of the screen, choose Dockable Dialogues, and then just choose Patterns. And they'll show up here, and mine are in the upper right-hand corner of my screen here. And most of these are already made for you in GIMP, but I have a few custom ones in there that I made. Let me show you one here. Drop this in. I call this one Psychedelia. And again, it's just a pattern that when you tile it together, it should continuously repeat in a continuous pattern, and hopefully it's seamless. And so that's the idea here. You want to create some patterns that when you tile them together next to each other, they just keep going and they look seamless, or as seamless as possible. So I'll do a simple one right now just to show you the whole process. I have a file here, 720 by 540, 300 ppi. And let's just go ahead and we'll just use a brush here. I'm going to start by using a brush. Go up to my paintbrushes up on the top here. And notice up here on the top also that I can also select my patterns now that they're open. But we're going to go to brush here. I'm just going to use an abstract kind of more of a sponge type brush, and let me blow this up too. Again, if you double click on the brush inside your brush window too, you can see what it looks like kind of blown up. So that's what that looks like. Again, I'm going to use the bracket tool here to bring it up. Or I can double click on my brush tool up in my regular toolbar. And I can change the size right there as well. Just drag the slider. And let's start, since we have a white background. We can also do this on a separate layer if you want to keep your layers separate. For now, I'll just do it on here. That'll be interesting to do it that way. And let's just start with a nice color, maybe a nice blue. Click OK. And I'm just going to start painting some patterns on here. And you can see the blue starting to pop out in certain areas. Okay, and already you have something working that looks pretty cool. And darken it up in a few areas. That looks good. And then now let's do a little more up there. Now let's bring in another color. Let's change it to maybe a red, for example. Kind of more on the orangish side, for complementary colors there maybe. Yeah, that would look nice. Click OK. And let's try a different brush. Let's go in here and let's try, what's this one next to it there? That's a different brush there, but let's see what it does. Let's blow it up. Okay, and I'm just using the bracket tool here. Let's make that one pretty good size too, and we'll throw in some red in there too. That looks pretty cool, actually. Okay, so you've got some nice patterns going on there. And let's go ahead and do another brush. I like these abstract patterns, so I'm going to keep that going while I'm on a roll here. Let's try maybe this one here. This one's a little different. And yeah, that's good. Let's bring out the colors a little more. I'm just using it to kind of embolden some of the colors here. Yeah, it looks nice. Okay, so we've got a nice abstract pattern going on here. And again, if I keep playing with that brush there, and let's add some more color here. Let's blow this up a little bit more. I don't want to add too much more, but just to kind of fill in it, give it some nice colorization there, dramatize it. And so that's what we have to start with. Now, another thing you could do is you could add a filter to it, which would be nice. So let's go up to filters. I'm just going to go ahead and try edge detect and neon. Now watch what happens if I just grab that neon. All of a sudden, look at this. I get something completely different. It's pretty interesting though. You can also bring up your intensity, your radius here. And you can see there's already a cool pattern really starting to happen there. It was different than it was before. So you can really like these or you can really hate these depending on, you know, what it is you're going for. But I kind of like that. So I'm going to stick with that. And that's kind of a neat pattern I have going on there. I'm going to click OK. I could try blurring it or even enhancing it. Let's see what happens if we hit sharpen or unsharp mask. You can sharpen that, and you can also go too far with that. But when you sharpen it, you're starting to really you're really starting to clear up the edges on these. See how much crisper it is. And if you bring the radius up, you can see really starts to do some damage. So the unsharp mask is cool because you can almost tighten it up, take away some of the blur. Click OK. That's a good place to start there. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to offset it. And what offset will do is it'll compensate for these sharp edges here. It'll move your objects over a little bit, both horizontally and vertically. So when they tile up next to each other, when you put these next to each other, the edges will meet and connect, and it'll look seamless. But we will still have to deal with some edges inside of here, and you'll see what I mean here in just a second. But first things first, let's go to offset. So we're going to go up to layer, transform, offset. Okay, so you click offset there. There's a setting here that says by width divided by 2, height divided by 2. That's the one you want. So click the one that says width and height. And you can see there it kind of moved it around a little bit. And there are some seams there that I'm going to have to address. So if I zoom in on this thing, let's go to my magnifying glass here. If you zoom in, if you look here close enough, you can see a real hard line. I'm going to get rid of those hard lines, okay? And let me show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to use two tools. You can use what's called the healing brush or the healing tool, or you can use the clone tool. The healing tool seems to be a little more effective in dealing with this kind of stuff. So I'm going to start with the healing tool, and then I'm going to go over to my brushes and just grab my circle brush. Double click on it here. Over here in the regular toolbar. Double click my brush. Make sure the hardness and the force are up on this one in this case. And here I can adjust the size if I need to with my slider. Now this is the hard line here I can really see. So I'm going to go down just underneath it and grab this area right underneath the line. Hold down Control, and I'm going to select that area. Okay, but first let me select my healing tool first. I forgot to do that. So make sure you click your healing tool up here in the toolbar. Now go down to an area that you want to use to heal the area. Hold down Control and click, and now it's going to remember that. And notice there it's just kind of adding to your canvas and getting rid of the sharp lines. Again, same thing over here. Hold down Control, click there once, and boom, you've gotten rid of some of that area. And notice here you're adding to it, but you're also getting rid of that seam. Click there, and then just that way you start healing up you get rid of the seams. Okay. So here again, I can go over up here, hold down Control, click over there, and again, you don't see the seams they're not as readily apparent. Okay, and that's kind of the idea, is to just kind of using that healing tool or healing brush, getting rid of some of the areas that need to cover up that seam. Okay, so it takes a little bit, but once you do it, you start to see how it works. It's a powerful tool. You can kind of match it to the others too. Let's see here. Let's grab this area. There we go. Watch this area. You can bring up there a little bit. Oh, actually, it adds a little too much there. So, you know, it's good to move around and just click once if you can. Just kind of upset the straight lines that are going through it. So you can start to see here that it's effectively getting rid of some of the sharp lines here. All right. So that's kind of how that works. Got some up here too we got to deal with. And with an abstract pattern like this, it's really easy to cover everything up and hide the seams too. So that looks pretty good there. Now notice here I've got some almost patterns going on there too. So if this is starting to look too light there, what you can do is grab your burn tool under your dodge and burn. Just make sure your burn is selected over here. And then just go ahead and burn those areas back in darker, and you'll see it'll start to blend in with the world around it. Okay, so it looks less conspicuous, like you did anything there. So, and then you can do the same thing around the canvas if it's looking too bright around some of those areas. Okay, so we've got a nice pattern here. Again, we can darken some of those areas that we healed so they blend in a little more. All right, so that's looking pretty good. The other thing we can use is the clone tool. So let me show you this. If I go up here, click on the clone tool, I can clone some of these areas that I just healed and add those in other areas to give it a little bit of a... And this time I'm going to bring down the hardness here so it kind of blends a little more, maybe even the force. And just grab an area, hold down Control with my clone tool, click there, and now I can go up somewhere and click that and make that appear again. Grab this, click up in there, and notice there it's starting to appear. But since I turned down the hardness and the force, it's very subtle. So you can fill in areas with that same pattern without covering them. Okay, and then you just get more of a blend of all these different patterns that you used. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. And since I turned, like I said, since I turned down the hardness and the force, it kind of comes in there subtly, almost seamlessly. That looks pretty good. Okay, so once you like what you have going there, the next step is to tile this thing, okay? Now, we've already done the offset. We fixed the seams. Now we're going to see how it'll look next to each other and see if it looks kind of seamless going out. So to tile this thing, you just go up to Filters, choose Map, Tile, and then to see how these things stack up next to each other, just increase your canvas size here. I'm going to double the size of this, even more than that. I'm going to, that's more than double, okay? So make your width and height much larger. Once you choose Filter, Map, Tile, click OK, and this is how they look next to each other tiled. That looks pretty good. There, you can see a little bit of pattern with the darker values, and I could probably address that. So if I hit Control Z, well, I can't go back after that, I guess. So the other thing I could do, though, is just grab my Dodge tool, Dodge and Burn. Again, change it to Dodge, and let's go up with the size on this thing. Let's double click it here and see if we get a size. I guess we don't get the size. Oh, yeah, we do. Here we go. You just bring it up right there on my toolbar. And just dodge it a little bit. Probably want to go down with it a little bit here. And just try to dodge those areas a little bit. Not too much, because you don't want it to look too obvious that you're doing some touch-up on it. But you can kind of reduce that pattern look by just dodging up some of those darker values in certain areas. And that kind of reduces the ability to see the pattern there. So, and that's kind of the goal, right? To make it as seamless looking as possible. That looks pretty good. All right. So there's my first pattern that I've created, and I'll call this well, let's call it a psychedelic shag. How about that? Or psychedelic grass. Okay, let's go up to File. You're going to go to File, Export, not Save As. You're going to use Export. And up here, you want to name it. So we're going to name this, I think I was going to call this psychedelic grass. So you want to come up with some names for your patterns. Oops. And whatever the file extension is in here, just change it manually up here to pattern. It's a .pat file. So psychedelicgrass.pat. Now, in order to get this to save into your patterns over here in your patterns window, you have to find your GIMP folder. So I'm going to go to local disk C. And mine's a long process. You go to users, and then I have to go to Mando, app data, roaming. And that's where my GIMP folder is. You have to find where your GIMP folder is. And then you click there, and then you find your patterns folder. And this is where you're going to save. These are all the patterns that I've created already. So then you click export. And it asks you, is this what you want to call it? Psychedelic grass? Yes, export. And now that should be in there as a pattern. And it should show up over here. Underneath your patterns on the right here, all my patterns, there's a little refresh. It's a circle with an arrow at the end. That's your refresh patterns. Click that, and that'll add in your new patterns into here. And there it is, psychedelic grass. So if I click on a new layer here, Shift, start a new layer. Let's fill that in with a solid color. Okay, and now let's say, oh, you know what? This is your background. Hey, I want to use a pattern. No problem. You can go over here and grab one of your patterns that you made. Just grab it and drop it in, and there it is. Okay, so this pattern now that I created is always going to be in my patterns unless I delete it. So that's the cool thing about creating patterns is that once you create it, it's there and you can use it for whatever applications you want. And so that's the basic process on how to create a pattern in GIMP.